Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 9 of the Moving Forward podcast, an NBA podcast hosted by me, Jacob Lothmer. We're back after a 4th of July weekend. We only had one basketball game this weekend. We talked about it a little bit on Friday with the Hawks and the Bucks. The Bucks finally wrap up this series, so we have our NBA Finals set between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Phoenix Suns. Not a whole lot of NBA news this week, so I don't plan on covering very many things, and I'm sure Sean and I will cover a lot about the first NBA Finals game, maybe the first two NBA Finals games, depending if that episode later this week is a Thursday or a Friday. But for now, I'm just going to talk about the Finals matchup and a little bit of the gambling odds, too, that go along with it, see what I like. But I really like the matchup between the Bucks and the Suns. I feel like this was the best possible case scenario coming out of the conference finals, with the Clippers really banged up and the Hawks, I don't think we're really ready to compete, and I think if the Hawks would have been the ones going against the Suns, I don't think it would have been a very good matchup. But this matchup, I think, is really, really good. I think the time off for the Suns will allow Cameron Johnson to be healthy. He is a great wing defender and three-point shooter for them who did not play in Game 6 against the Clippers. He was dealing with a knee injury, and I think he was about like 50-50 to play, but the Suns felt confident without playing with him. So, I really like that move. Have more time to be able to bring Cameron Johnson back. And on the other end for the Bucks, the big question is Giannis Antetokounmpo. Will he be ready for Tuesday's Game 1 against the Suns in Phoenix? And I think he was ready. I think he could have really tried to play in Game 6 if he wanted to. I think they were keeping him for Game 7 just to be safe if they couldn't handle it on the road. But I think Giannis will definitely be ready to play in Game 1. This is a big thing for Giannis' career. A lot of the things so far is Giannis isn't a playoff player, can't get things done in the playoffs, and I think he's trying to prove people wrong this year with, really showing up in the playoffs, doing what he does well. I really need Giannis to stay focused, though, and not fall in love with a three-pointer that he occasionally does at times. So if Giannis can get out of his own head and not settle for jump shots is the big thing with Giannis, and get to the free throw line a lot. We know he's not a great free throw shooter, but if you can get foul trouble on their wing defenders and you can get the good ones out of the game, like Jay Crowder, like Mikal Bridges, like Cameron Johnson, then they're forced to play guys lower down in the rotation, and that's where you could really see the Bucks take advantage of this game. Because what the Bucks do have is a really, really good starting five, maybe a sixth and seventh man who are playable. So they're really strong seven. But the Suns are such a deep team with so much depth that the Bucks are going to have to try to get it on an even playing field. The Bucks are going to have to cause foul trouble. They're going to hope that one of these wing guys don't show up, which is really, really hard because the Suns just have so much depth that they have so many different opportunities to make you hurt that way. So I think that this is going to be a really, really great matchup, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. I personally think that the Phoenix Suns are going to win the finals this year. I think they're a more well-rounded team. So as far as my finals pick for who I think is going to win the whole thing is the Phoenix Suns, but from game to game, that could differ. So let's see some gambling lines so far for this NBA Finals. So right now that they have it predicted that the Phoenix Suns will win this championship. They're at minus 170, so $170 to win $100. So if you're a big believer in the Milwaukee Bucks, you can get them at really, really good odds right now. About 62% of people are betting on the Phoenix Suns to win this series. So I think that the Bucks is a really good value play, especially if Giannis is healthy and they get some really good minutes. But like I said, I think the Suns are clearly going to win this series. So if you want to bet just the series winner, then those are your odds for you. Plus 145 for the Bucks or minus 170 for the Suns. Going into a game to game, you kind of get a prediction of what you think the series will end as. It's really hard to kind of predict what you think is going to happen, but my best guess is I think the Phoenix Suns probably win this one in 6 games. I would say either 6 or 7. I don't think this will be a short series at all. I think there can be games where Milwaukee can get hot and Milwaukee can be cold. So if you really think the Bucks or the Suns are going to win, I would start looking towards the 4-3, 4-3 either Bucks win or Suns win, because I think that's the best possible odds that you can get, because I definitely don't think this will be a short series at all. I think these two teams are very well matched up, and I think this is one of the first times that we haven't seen like a LeBron or Steph in the finals in a long time, and I think that's really, really good for the NBA, even though as a big LeBron guy, you like to see him there, but I think this is really big for the NBA, and I think it will show and showcase these really, really great talents. As far as the finals MVP, it's clearly going to be Chris Paul, Devin Booker, or Giannis Antetokounmpo. Unless Giannis gets hurt again and it's Chris Middleton for the rest of the year, I don't see it being any of the rest of the guys. Chris Paul is a heavy favorite for the Suns. I wouldn't see it any other way. If Chris Paul plays every single game for the Suns and the Suns win the NBA Finals, it's going to be Chris Paul, even if Devin Booker is significantly better than him, just because of Chris Paul's long career and how much he's done for the NBA. I don't see it being anybody but Chris Paul. But for the Bucks, it can only be Antetokounmpo and Chris Middleton. So Chris Paul plus 150, Giannis plus 300, and Chris Middleton way further down is at plus 600. Those are really good odds. So bet accordingly. And for the first game, the Suns are minus 5.5. Could see that line moving if Giannis is injured. But I don't know exactly how that's going to go. So I would, stay on the lookout to see if that line's change come tomorrow when they finally announce whether Giannis will play or not. I think that's the big key component is, will Giannis play? And I think if Giannis plays, I think you can see that line kind of shrink to maybe 3 or 2.5. And if you get it there, I really like the Suns' value there. They've had time to relax and be healthy. So depending on how the line changes, I would go with Suns if it gets down to 2.5. But right now, I really like Bucks plus 5.5. I feel like that's a really good value play. I think the Bucks have a really good chance to win this game. But also, if Giannis is playing and it stays at 5.5, I think that's really, really good bet. I think both these teams play great offense. They play subpar defense. So I think there's points to be scored as well. 217 over is a pretty decent over. The Suns have actually proven to be a pretty good defensive team this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if it hits the under. But for the first game, it's kind of a feel-out game of the NBA Finals. I'd go over 217.5. So those are my gambling selections for game one. So thank you for listening to this part of this podcast. I've been told to try to do better on the transitions, so this is me wrapping up the kind of finals preview, and now I will be moving forward into, like we've been doing, one good thing and one bad thing in the NBA this week. Stay tuned. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the love-hate section. This is the section where I talk about one thing I loved and one thing I hated in the NBA this week. And since the Olympics is right around the corner, I will be doing a special Olympics edition. So, my thing that I absolutely loved was Slovenia making the Olympics. So Luka Doncic, the Slovenian all-star, the one that everybody talks about, decided to play for the Olympics after a long grueling season this year, and he did just that. He played for his national team, and because of that, they are going to be making the Olympics this year, which is super, super impressive that a guy like Luka, with not a whole lot of help around him, I'm like 85% sure he's the only NBA player on this team. So him to be able to lead like kind of a team of like really good players still, but not NBA quality players is super impressive. And it really reminds me of some of the Germany teams with like Dirk and stuff like that. And I know he already draws comparison to Dirk Nowitzki because of the Dallas Mavericks, but this really reminds me of Dirk because Dirk really kept those German teams competitive when there wasn't a whole lot of NBA talent on those teams. But like him, Luka Doncic led them to qualifying for the Olympics and with not much help around him. So I find that super, super impressive. But speaking of a team that has a lot of help around them, my hate for the week is the Canadian national team. I don't hate the Canadian national team, obviously. I'm just more disappointed in the Canadian national team. They had an absolutely stacked roster, and they couldn't seem to beat Thomas Satoransky in their final game, who hit a game winner in overtime to send the Canadian national team home. This team is coached by Nick Nurse, so they have a high-quality NBA coach on their team, along with an absolutely stacked roster. So let me name some of the names on this team that they didn't have. So they didn't have Jamal Murray, obviously, with his ACL injury. He wasn't able to play. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander decided not to play either, or Dylan Brooks. And their big men were hurting a little bit because they didn't have Tristan Thompson or Kelly Olynyk or Chris Boucher from the Raptors. And even Khem Birch, they weren't sitting out. They were kind of waiting to see if the team made the Olympics before they decided to see if they were going to play. So they didn't play in the qualifying rosters. But this qualifying roster is still a really talented team. You have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's a really talented scorer for the Pelicans. RJ Barrett, who is a almost perennial all-star. He's close to an all-star. He's almost there. Lou Dort, who's an excellent wing shooter and on-ball defender. Corey Joseph, a longtime guard veteran Andrew Wiggins, a multi-time All-Star for the Warriors, and Anthony Bennett making a reappearance after being out of the NBA for a few years. He was on this Canadian qualifying team. And then they had Dwight Powell of the Mavericks and Trey Lyles of the Spurs. So this team is absolutely loaded with NBA talent, but yet they still can't find a way to make the national team. They haven't made the Olympics since the year 2000, which is really, really shocking to me, especially considering how much the talent of NBA players in Canada has been growing over the past 10 years, which I think is great for the game of basketball and great for the country of Canada, but still they're struggling to make the Olympics. So this team was absolutely stacked, and I'm surprised. It probably would be the second biggest NBA rostered team, besides possibly Spain being the second, but definitely the United States is one. They don't take a single player who's not on an NBA roster. So just really shocked that they would probably be one of the teams with the most NBA talent on their team heading into the Olympics. And I think they'd easily qualify and get out of the first round of the Olympics and really play themselves into the opportunity of winning a gold medal if they got lucky. But that's not even going to happen. They don't even get to have the chance. So I'm just really disappointed. When you have a great coach like Nick Nurse and this talented of a roster, I'm really surprised that they weren't able to pull this together and really put a good team out there to win. So hats off to the team that beat them. Thomas Satoransky hitting a game winner. I'm not 100% sure even the country Thomas Satoransky is from, but that's a bad look for the Canadian national team. And like I said, I don't hate them. I'm just really disappointed that they couldn't find a way with this much NBA talent to make the Olympics. So thank you for listening to the Love-Hate segment. Now we will be transitioning over into the Orlando Magic draft strategy. So the Orlando Magic have the 5th pick in this year's draft. So I will be talking about who they're going to take with the 5th pick in this draft. Sean and I broke down the first 4 teams. So stay tuned to who I have the Orlando Magic taking at number 5. So the Orlando Magic were pretty bad this year, as a lot of people have said. They ended up with 2 picks in the top 8 of this year's NBA draft, though. I'll only be focusing on pick 5, and I will be doing pick 8 later on. But for pick 5, as you heard Sean and I really talk about, there's a big top 4 in this year's draft with Suggs, Mobley, Cunningham, and Green. But for a long time, there was consensus really strong 5, and that 5th player was Jonathan Kuminga. I will be having the Orlando Magic take Jonathan Kuminga as kind of a replacement for Aaron Gordon after trading him this year. They traded Aaron Gordon about halfway through the season. They decided that they weren't going to try to make the playoffs this year. They kind of moved on. They traded away Vucevic to the Bulls for their number 8th pick in this draft, and they traded away Aaron Gordon for probably a pick from Denver as well. Not sure what number pick that is, but I'm sure they got a pick for him. So last year was a really dumpster fire for the Orlando Magic. Markelle Fultz was hurt the whole year. Jonathan Isaac was hurt the whole year. And they traded away a lot of key pieces like Gordon and Vucevic. They still have a good scorer like Terrence Ross on their team, who's a good 6-man off the bench. They traded for Gary Harris, who's a very capable wing defender, probably makes too much money, but is a very capable wing defender. So with this pick, I'm going to have them take Jonathan Kuminga, who is a real replacement for Aaron Gordon. So Kuminga is a really raw, talented, special, big man. He's not a big, but he's not a wing. He's kind of in the middle. He reminds me a lot of early Blake Griffin, to be honest, except maybe a little bit better shooting skills. He can step outside and hit the 3. He played for the G League Ignite last year, and he was really, really good their first game. When I was watching that first game, I really was watching him and Jalen Green, who were both on the Ignite team, and I thought to myself, man, this Kuminga guy might be better than Jalen Green. But Kuminga got hurt partway through their season, and in such a short year, he didn't put up a whole lot of tape. So he possibly could have been a higher pick if he could have stayed healthy, but after getting hurt, he didn't play so much, and then after returning, he was kind of slow, and Jalen Green had cemented himself as the number 1 scorer on that team and was really just dominating the G League with players who had been playing in the NBA or had dreams of the NBA for a long time. So, being the second best player on that Ignite team, Jonathan Kuminga had to take a backseat, but he's a 6'8", really long, versatile 4. He's probably a better fit for the Magic moving forward than Gordon was because he can spread the floor a little bit better than Gordon can, and he is a more versatile defender, which Aaron Gordon's never really been known for, but he also still brings that same explosiveness around the rim. Kuminga right now, I would say, is a very, very raw prospect, only 18 years old, is super special. He reminds me a lot of Sekou Doumbouya, but further along in the process. That would be my comp to him right now in the NBA, a further along Sekou, which is really, really good. Almost kind of like an OG Anunoby type, but a little less polished. So if you want to think about it, it's right in the middle between Sekou Doumbouya and OG Anunoby. Here is Jonathan Kuminga, and that's a pretty good pick to get with your 5th overall pick. A lot of people think this top 4 is super ready for the NBA draft, but the 5th pick is where they're going to struggle. And with that 5th pick, I think Jonathan Kuminga is a really good pick. You can get players who are NBA ready, but most of them, I believe, are on the guard side. And this Orlando Magic team doesn't need any guards. They have Cole Anthony, they have RJ Hampton, and they have Markelle Fultz, who they signed to a long-term agreement. So with those 3 guards, you don't really want to go guard. And where they struggle is wings. They have Mo Bamba and Wendell Carter as your big men, and you kind of have to figure out which one of those you're going to pay next offseason. So you're going to want to go wing, and if they don't go Kuminga, I could see them going Scotty Barnes, who's more of a small forward. He's a little bit more of a playmaker than Kuminga is, but I think Kuminga would set in their system really nice. And I think if you can have him and Jonathan Isaac next to each other to play defense on those wings, I think that's a very, very tough team to score against, especially in the wing positions. If you want to go Jalen Johnson, who's more of a pure scorer, you could if you think that's like what your team really needs as a scorer. But I really see it being those options. I can't see them going anything outside of a wing player. There's been a lot of talk to see if you could trade 5 and 8 to move up in this year's draft. I don't think that's a for sure thing. I think people are really, really happy with their first 4. So I couldn't see a 4, a 5, and an 8 getting you very high in this year's draft. They could try to trade one of their picks for a better all-star, but this team isn't a rebuild, so I wouldn't think that they're going to do that. So with my pick, I'm going to have them taking Kuminga, but I would not be surprised if they took Scotty Barnes or Jalen Johnson, depending on what they think that they need from this offseason. So thank you everybody for listening to episode 9 of the Moving Forward podcast. I appreciate everybody who had different criticisms or things to say and how to improve in this podcast. So thank you for everybody for sticking with me. I really appreciate everybody who's been listening so far. We just got over 100 total plays from all the episodes. So anybody who's listened, take their time out to support me. I really appreciate that. So yeah, thank you. I hope everyone had a really nice 4th of July weekend. But we're back to the grind, and the NBA Finals start tomorrow. Remember, my pick for Game 1 will be Bucks plus 5.5, depending on the Giannis news. So, like I said, if the Suns somehow get to 2.5 and Giannis is playing, take the Suns. Stays at 5.5 and Giannis is playing, take the Bucks. That is mine for the day. I'd wait till closer to game time or until you hear about Giannis to make your final decision. But thank you everybody for listening. Make sure if you want to, you can watch this on YouTube, Loth11. I do mostly the video version of the podcast and NBA 2K rebuilds over there, but also you can always just listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. So thank you very much for listening. We'll be back later in the week with Sean, and we will do all the stuff we usually do on a Thursday, Friday episode. So look forward to hearing from you guys. Look forward to talking to you guys. Have a good week. Peace.